Welcome to Corks Conversation with William Maz.
Yes, his debut novel, The
Hmm.
Bucharest Dossier, which
Love this. I love
we're
this.
holding up.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, is let me just keep it in my hand. It's a historical spy thriller, but it is really timely, Kathy, for what's going on in the
Mhm.
world now. So I was excited to read this. Put it
Yeah,
that way.
it that is for sure. We have a lot to talk about, but first, let me tell you a little bit more about William. He was born in Bucharest, Romania, and immigrated to the U.S. as a child. He is a graduate of Harvard University, Mount Sinai Medical School, and then he did a residency in anesthesia at Yale. He practiced medicine, and during that time, he continued writing and developing a passion for writing. Then he went on to study writing. He studied at Harvard, the New School, and the Writers Studio in New York City, among other things I read. And he's now writing full time. So, William, thanks for joining us. It's great to have you.
It's great to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're excited to talk about the book, obviously, and all things spies.
Yes.
But first, obviously, we need to discuss or taste the wine. So William
Mm-hmm.
chose Meiomi Pinot
Yeah.
Noir.
Mm.
Are you joining us today?
Absolutely.
Well,
Cheers.
should we say cheers to you in your debut?
Yeah,
Thank you very
awesome.
much. Thank
It's
you.
it's yes. And I mean, did you see, Kathy, that Lee Child has his
Yes.
own thing right at the top of the book? So you can't get much better than that.
No. Lee Child says, very impressive and very recommended. Now, that is an endorsement you can be proud of, I would think. But you're pretty.
Yes.
It
Yes.
really is. Thank you. I was very grateful.
And so anyway, this wine, what do you guys think?
Oh, it's nice.
Yes. It's according to the winemaker, the California coast is one of the best wine growing areas for Pinot Noir, which I think they made a movie about that or something. But I I like it. It's very jammy. It's boysenberry,
Hmm.
blackberry, but there's still my heart, loves the mocha. So there's still a little mocha undertones. So we're gonna enjoy that today.
Yeah, good choice, William. I like this a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. My
Do you
wife
drink
and I
this a
both like.
lot?
My wife and I both like it. The truth is, I don't drink a lot of wine, and what I've found over the years is that the tannins put me to sleep, make me sleep.
Oh, that's not good.
So Pinot Noir has the least amount, at least from what I've been told. So
Hmm.
if I will drink something, I'll drink Pinot Noir. But we don't usually drink. Because my wife will go under the table with a half a glass of champagne. So it's like,
Okay, so we're going to be very careful and just sip. We don't want you falling.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
why not?
By the end of the episode, he's like, I don't have anything more to say.
No, I'm not like that. I mean, if I want to have a drink, I'll have a scotch or
Uh-huh.
Okay, okay.
a vodka. But anyway,
Well,
Like the black label in the book or whatever, the Johnny
mm-hmm,
Walker black label.
mm-hmm.
oh, yeah, I have a good story about that. So we can talk about that.
Oh yeah, what about it? You can go ahead and we can jump right in right now.
Well, I was in Bucharest during the 80s, and my cousin is a well-known actress there. And part of that scene that I have in the book, in which Bill Heflin, my hero, meets a famous actor. His real name is Radu Beligan. He's like the Laurence Olivier of
Oh,
Bucharest. No, I mean,
Mhm.
he's dead now,
yeah.
unfortunately. Um,
So I think is Laurence Olivier. So.
but yes, so he was very famous. And I asked Irina, what should I bring to the party? And she says, Johnny Walker Black, but you have to go to the tourist shops to get it because you can't get it anywhere. The tourist shops were these places that Ceausescu had created for tourists so that they would spend dollars
Mm,
because he was hungry for dollars.
mhm.
So I went there and I found Johnny Walker Black and I bought 2 bottles and I was the life of the party.
I bet you were.
So I decided to use it as a theme in the book.
Yeah, it was throughout. Okay, so let's give everybody a little idea of the synopsis here of this book, so everybody knows. So this is it's a spy thriller. It's historical. It is a love story. There's all of that there. But really, it starts. It's in Romania, 1989. Is where the dominant part of the book takes place. But it starts with your, as you said, your main character, Bill Heflin, who's a CIA analyst, but he's also a Romanian expat. He kind of took on an American identity, but really still has great love for his home country. He ends up having to go back to Bucharest because an asset. He is the only CIA analyst that has its own asset, codename Boris, which just was my favorite part of this. I was like, yes, it has to be Boris. And as he goes back, he gets embroiled in this uprising that's a historical, historical fact, a revolution, and then nothing, as spy novels want you to get sucked in, right? Nothing is as it seems. At the same time, he's searching for his childhood love that has got to these mythic proportions in his mind. And so he's dealing with all kinds of different things. What's really going on? What's the CIA's role? Who is Boris? Why is Boris pulling the strings of his life? All good stuff. So if you like John le Carre or Daniel Silva, I think this is the novel for you. So there's that. So, okay, here's my first question. So, like I said, it is a spy thriller, very traditional spy thriller. It is a historical fiction. It is a love story. And I was wondering which one of those 3 came to you first when you were coming up with this plot.
Well, that's very interesting because my first novel was when I was a medical student, I wrote, and it was purely about Pusha, who was this girl that existed in my life when I was a kid. And I loved the character. I came to America when I was 8. And for decades, I was thinking about Pusha. That part is true.
Oh, interesting.
I love that.
Not the rest of it, but that part. It almost got bought. I had an agent. And Knopf almost bought it, but they didn't like the psychological. It was a psychological novel, and my first. So I wasn't able to sell it, but I used that part, which was personal, as the anchor to the book. And then I decided, well, how am I going to use this? I'm not going to write a psychological novel. I'm going to write something else. And so then I started doing reading and research and into the revolution of 1989 in Romania. And I realized I needed to write a spy novel. I love spy novels. And I had written 2 other novels in the meantime, still unpublished, but hopefully they will be, that were medical thrillers, Michael Crichton type of medical.
Oh, love that.
But not like in a hospital. They were like scientific thrillers. One was about, what would happen if the government found out that a scientist discovered the cure for aging? What would they do? Would they make it public?
You're going to have to write that again or edit it and get it out because that sounds good.
Ready. It's ready.
Okay, good.
So anyway, so then I started writing the thriller, and then one thing led to another. The revolution, once I got into researching it, and then I remembered all the things. You have to remember that during the 70s and 80s, I went back to Romania probably about a dozen times to visit relatives and so forth. So I stayed extended periods of times. One year I stayed a whole summer. And so I knew the whole atmosphere. I knew what the people were going through, the whole Securitate situation, being followed all the time and so forth. So I wanted to bring all of that into the book to provide the atmosphere and to really make, Americans realize what that kind of totalitarian regime does and what living under it means. So that's how I brought all the aspects together.
Wow.
And the tough part was, of course, intertwining them.
Yeah. Which you did beautifully. This is such a timely topic. And I'm sure when you're writing this, you obviously know this, but for right now, readers who are trying to make sense of what's going on with Russia and Ukraine and what it's like for the Ukrainians, this is a very timely book because you really explain in all kinds of ways about what it is like to live under communist rule. I mean, do you think there's some takeaways that current readers apply to the current situation? Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to make one thing clear. I did not call Putin and tell him to invade.
I have a book coming out and I would like you.
So I plead the fifth on that. No, I mean, it's a tragic thing and we shouldn't about it.
Trivialize it.
I come from the operating room where we use jokes to take away the tension while you're doing brain surgery or something. So
humor's a good medicine.
Yes, what you're having now and what you've had for the past 22 years, Putin's in power, has been getting more and more power in order to make it into a totalitarian regime that he's missing, that he missed the good old Soviet days in which everything was centralized. The police, the secret police, KGB was all powerful. People had no sources of outside information other than the propaganda that they were getting from the government. And he's getting wealthy beyond belief. They think he is the richest man on the planet at this point, probably around $500 billion. Because in order to start a business there, you have to give him a percentage of the business.
You have to give him personally a percentage?
Personally.
So like all these oligarchs, they literally have to give him a percentage of their wealth?
First of all, the oligarchs were put in there by him. So they didn't create their own billions. They were old KGB pals, most of them. And he needed people around him to make sure he's got the power. So he put them all in positions of power. They made him heads of petroleum companies, Gazprom, and they made him heads of banks and departments in the government and so forth. So he made them wealthy. Of course, part of that wealth that comes from each one of these companies goes to him personally, to Putin. And he's got, offshore accounts everywhere, but nobody can trace them because they're not in his name. They're in his friends' names, his, relatives' names, or whatever. So the point about totalitarian regimes is the propaganda that keeps the population dormant, basically. In Romania, I mean, this is all from the playbook of the communists. In Romania, in those days, there were only 2 hours of television a day in the evening. And all of it was filled with propaganda showing Ceausescu going to a factory and declaring, the great progress of socialism. Of course, they called it socialism. They mixed socialism and communism because they didn't want to scare the West. So they wanted to associate themselves with like social democrats in Germany, those parties, which are nothing like what he was doing. But he wanted to make communism sound a little tamer than it was. But he was a Stalinist. And I could go into the whole history of it. But life under that kind of Stalinist regime was was horrible from many points of view, both in terms of the secret police and in terms of the starvation that was going on at the time, which, I can go into whenever you want.
You know what? It's amazing to me and embarrassing that, I was around during that time period and had no idea. Had no idea what was going on, and I want to say like 89, I think I was just graduated college, and then I was a flight attendant, international flight attendant, and I still didn't really, we just lived our lives. We didn't understand that what was going on to that extent, and so I wonder how it's going to be different this time around, although, because the media is so strong.
Well, don't feel bad. Our presidents didn't know what was going on. So let me tell you a little story. During the early 70s, Ceausescu decided that he needed money to expand his economy because it was starving, right? So he decided he was going to put a different face on his foreign affairs to appear like he is independent of the Soviet Union, that he is a reasonable fellow, that he wants to be friends with the West. And the West bought it. They feted him. Actually, Nixon came to Bucharest in 68. And then he was at one point with Carter. He wanted to project that kind of independent and different type of Soviet leader, or I should say communist leader. In the meantime, his whole internal policy was stricter than Russia's or Czechoslovakia's or Germany's. But the West bought it, and they started giving him loans from Western banks and so forth. Eventually, he got about $10 billion worth of loans, and he invested them in all sorts of projects that never quite worked out, of course. He made a petroleum refining plant, cost billions, that never got the oil from Iran that he thought he would be getting to refine, and so forth. And he used some of it to build his big palace, which I mentioned in the book.
Mm-hmm.
It is the largest government building next to the Pentagon. So it's second largest in the world.
That's amazing.
It's hard. It's honestly hard to get your brain around that. I mean, it's hard to even understand that as, I mean, I know you say it, but it's like, what? Crazy.
It even had an underground bunker for radioactive protection, because he thought, in case of a nuclear attack, he wanted to stay. Anyway, so in the 80s, after he lost all that money, he decided he needed to pay it all back. And the only thing he had to sell, because Romania didn't make anything, none of the communist countries made anything that could be sold in the West, because all their products weren't any good. He had to sell grain and natural minerals. The population starved. It got so bad that the peasants who were actually creating the grain got the least of it. Most of it went to the cities that was left behind that he didn't sell. And the peasants were relegated to giving their kids whatever food they had and boiling grasses and roots in order to make a soup out of it to survive. They tried to get on trains to go to Bucharest to get bread. And Ceausescu found out about it, and he started a internal visa system that prevented them from getting on the trains.
Oh my gosh.
So they starved. And even in Bucharest, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing lines of 100, 150 people standing to buy bread or milk or eggs or shoes or whatever it was. And I describe a little of that in the book. Many times.
Yeah, don't worry. The book is not like wallowing in this, but it does show it, and but there's still all the spy stuff.
That's right.
and You always are going to root for the good guys and stuff like that. So,
Christy, do you think we should get into our question in the bottle?
oh, yep, sure.
Okay.
Uh-oh.
So this is the time we ask the authors. We get to talk to a random question that you might get to the bottom of the bottle.
I'm
Just
afraid
random.
of
Okay.
Oh, gosh. All right. Let's see. If you were stranded on a remote island for a year, what one outfit would you bring?
Outfit?
Yes.
Oh, God.
Well, this says a lot because, well, let's hear what his answer is.
Okay.
What would you
Wait a
bring?
minute. Is it a tropical island or is it?
That's your choice. See, that's where I think it could be.
No, it's a tropical island. I love the beach. So what would I need on a tropical island? The only thing I would need is sunscreen and a big hat.
I mean, if you're stranded there by yourself, like, do you even really need clothes? That's
Well,
the question.
That's why I said the hat.
I would add mosquito repellent
I was
to
gonna say,
that.
I thought bugs. Yeah. Like a full like sunscreen bug suit is what I would want.
Well, I would go with William's answer, but Cathi, I think you would have a different answer because I think you would pick a northern island, wouldn't you?
I do love a tropical island, but I do also, we're this summer going to one of our favorite spots, which is the San Juan Islands north and west of Seattle. And it's
so you need more than probably just a hat.
Yeah. Yeah. This gets very complex, Christy. I don't. Okay.
All right.
Well, that was good. All right. I'm having a sip. And then let's go on to our second half of questions.
Okay. All right. All right. So we are very curious as well about your transition from medicine to writing spy novels and now doing it full time. So can you tell us a little bit about how that came about?
Sure. Well, I've always been a writer. I started writing when I was in 7th grade, I remember, Mrs. Garbutt's English class.
So
she had us write short stories. And my first one was about 3 little chickens that my mother got me when we were in the refugee camp in Greece.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
We stayed there 2.5 years, unlike the character who stayed only 1 year, but in these barracks. But she wanted me to have some pets, so she got me these chicks, which unfortunately did not survive because it was too cold for them. They needed, and I was putting a light bulb next to them to keep them warm and everything else. So I wrote a short story about that. And then she had me read it in class, and they loved it, and I got hooked. And I love language. I love writing. I love every part of it. I love rewriting. I love looking at a sentence and trying to figure out a better way of saying it. And I've been tinkering with the sequel to this, which is basically done, for like the past month, because every time I read it, I go, no, I think this word should be this.
That's a hard thing to decide when to just be like, okay, I have to stop.
Yeah.
Well, how many languages do you speak? Or write in?
3 fluently, and Greek, Romanian, and English. And I took 5 years of French in high school, but you can't learn a language unless you live there for a period.
Right.
So
right.
I can read it, but I can't speak it really.
But your preferred writing is in English.
Oh, I came when I was 8, so
that was the main formative writing period. Yeah.
Yeah, and I never went to school when I was in Romania. I left when I was 6, so
wow.
I went to 1st and 2nd grade in Greece actually. So my reading and writing of Romanian is not very good because I self-taught.
Yeah.
But my speaking is fine. My accent, is pretty native. So whenever I go there, they take me for a native.
I like that about your character in the book too.
Yeah. So we read off all of your medical training, but we also talked about your vigorous writing training. You really like education, it seems like. And you went to a lot of really prestigious writing programs. And I have a question. I want to know if you were teaching other writers, what would be your top 3 tips that you would want them to take away?
Okay. Well, first of all, I would tell them not to go to writing classes. Well, because after you've learned a few things, they become relatively useless. Because think about what a writing class looks like. It's a group of 6 to 10 students with a writer as a teacher. And everybody writes something every week, and they come to class to read it out loud, and then they get criticized by the students. So, I mean, to me, the students don't know any more than I do.
Right.
So why are you listening to them?
Yeah. And the teacher doesn't have time to read like all of these 10 short stories and so forth. He's got his own writing to do. So he might say a word or two, but there's no like line by line or paragraph by paragraph analysis of the book or of the story or whatever. And so they become relatively, discussions between people who don't know anything about somebody's writing, So once you go to a few of them, stop going. What you need if you have some money is write a novel and then have an editor, a well-known editor. You got to hire them, and they will go paragraph by paragraph and let you see where you went wrong and so forth. To me, that was the most useful. And the other thing is rewrite. A lot of the stuff you write on the first time around gets thrown out. It's just no good. And you listen to all the famous writers and they tell you the same thing.
Yeah.
If I were to publish my first version, I would be a hack. You go back and you go back. And the way I write, so there are two different extremes. There are those who outline the plot and everything, which I don't do. And there are those who have absolutely no idea what they're going to write about, and they just start writing. Well, I'm not that either. So I'm somewhere in between, like a lot of writers are, where I have some idea of what I'm going to talk about, where I'm going. I make notes. I have books of notes. And then I slowly start writing to find out exactly what I'm writing about, because I find all sorts of connections between characters, between scenes, between plot lines as I'm writing.
Oh.
And that's the fun part, isn't it?
That is the fun part.
Yeah.
Because you have these other writers who outline the whole thing and then they just fill in the blanks almost. That's no fun for me, So that's how I write. And I love it. I mean, I just discovered something today that I added another scene in there because I go, oh my God, this would be great, And so it's never
That's
done.
great. You got to love what you do,
Yeah.
If you don't love it, don't do it, right?
Yeah, scene. I mean, when you say that, you can see the joy in your face, which is pretty awesome. So I'm curious also, you mentioned you've written a few other novels that didn't get published, which clearly should, because the pitch for that one was really good about the aging. I'm just saying. Anybody listening. But how has your experience as a debut novelist been versus your expectations of what it would be like?
Oh boy. It has happened really fast. I hired a PR agency, Merrill Moss Media, and as you know, and they have been incredible. I mean, they have been incredible. I mean, every day or every other day, I have an event of some sort, some live, some in person, some Zooms, some podcasts, and it's been a whirlwind.
So you would recommend that, debut novelists try to work with a publicist, or?
I would, but they're expensive. So that's the problem. Okay. If you'd better be knowledgeable about social media. But the thing is, if you're alone, I mean, how do you even get, an event with you? I mean, what, they're going to call and say hi,
Yeah.
Yeah, or we'll see you at the bar. No,
Yeah,
I'm just
right.
kidding. No,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
we do see people, at conferences and things too, that we meet people.
Yeah.
But yeah, the publicists are the best way to.
By and large, most of our episodes are booked through publicists, or some of the publishing houses, will have their own in-house publicists that reach out to us. But and we do have authors that reach out for sure.
Or we just meet somebody and we're like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, be great."
Or sometimes, yeah, I'll
So
say to
if
Christy,
we
like,
happen to be
yeah,
up there in New York and we're like, okay, having a glass of wine or a scotch.
yeah. But it's interesting because I love hearing about all the things that you don't anticipate happening versus what you expected would happen. I just think it's a fascinating period of time. Your first, big book birthday, and
Yeah. And
what the
I thought I
realities
would
are.
be nervous. I thought I'd be nervous talking to people, but I found out I love it.
Oh,
And yes,
well, you're
and
so knowledgeable on your
Yeah,
topic too.
there you go. You could be a podcaster.
A
Just
spy
add that.
thriller podcast.
well, I used to do acting when I was in college, so maybe that's got something to do with it.
Yeah, probably does.
Well, this has been so fun. Christy has a final question for you.
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. So we asked this of all our authors, to appease our foodies out there, our mysterious foodies. Which of your characters would you like to share a meal with, and what would it be?
Oh, that's an easy one.
Oh.
It would be with Boris,
Yay!
and I would have a borscht.
I knew you were going to say that. I was thinking.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's
that's
awesome.
funny. Yeah.
Most people have to like him and ha. You're like, I know. Okay, so along with what we just talked about, so when our listeners hear about you and they want to reach out, where's the best way to get a hold of you or find out more information?
So you can go to williammaz.com. That's my website, and you can get everything you want from there. And you can sign up, and I send out little essays every so often. So
I signed up today, FYI, everyone, for the newsletter.
Well, this has been so fun. We're so glad that you joined us. I mean, I feel like we could do a whole nother podcast talking more questions, but alas, we can just cheers your debut.
Yes. Cheers to you, William.
Cheers.
Thanks so much for having me.